Chapter 35, Offred musing about various things, and various things to do with the depictions of women here. Now, she's talking about she gets her tray delivered to her room. She says as if for an invalid, and then there's that wordplay. So I've written words there: an invalid, one who has been invalidated, no valid passport, no exit. So she's treated like an invalid, and then she plays with the word invalid to mean something completely different. No passport, no exit. So that then becomes the fact that she's in prison here. Watching him, I watched them too. Everything was the colour it usually is, only brighter. I don't have an awful lot to say about that. But this is more interesting. I don't want to be telling this story. Now we see that in Frankenstein, there's a lot of people who have to tell their story. Robert Walton tells his story to his sister. Frankenstein tells his story to Robert Walton. The monster tells his story to Frankenstein. Justine tells her story to Frankenstein. All these people telling their stories, and Offred too is telling her story, but she doesn't want to be. And then again, it's a bit like with Janine in the previous chapter, sort of going absent, becoming dissociative. It's possible to go so far down and back they could never get you out. Don't let the bastards ground you down. In fact, a lot of good it did her being her predecessor in the house, the previous handmaid, who of course is dead. Why fight? And then that will never do. So it's a bit stream of consciousness-esque here. Call back to reality. She's calling herself back to reality. And she's remembering this conversation with the commander. And here we have the modern world and how love is depicted in the modern world. So there's this long section here. It's not super long, but a little section here. And we have a lot of wordplay. Falling into love. How he sneers at it. It was a central thing. It was the way you understood yourself. If it never happened to you, not ever, you'd be like a mutant, a creature from outer space. Everyone knew that. CF the monster, of course. So in our modern society, it's the society of the 80s, but also society now, love is so key. If you take sort of women's magazines, if you take television from the 80s and 90s, especially if you think of things like Sex and the City and Ally McBeal, which are a bit before your time, so much television and media aimed at women was all about how to catch a man. I would say that there's been a bit of a shift contextually over the past sort of 10, 15 years or so. Modern feminists have said, well, hang on, it's not very feminist if women are always just trying to find a man. And as sexuality has opened up, people who are asexual have had more of a voice. So I would say, I don't know, I don't read women's magazines, but I suspect that Cosmopolitan, for example, has less about how to please a man than it used to. That would be called very heteronormative. So I think probably our culture is a bit different from the 80s culture, in that we're even more aware of gender, of sort of differences in sexuality and that kind of thing. But I've written here the modern world and the commodification of love, how love is turned into a commodity, something that you buy. God is love, they said once, but we reversed that. Love, like heaven, was always just around the corner. Falling in love, falling women. A fallen woman is a woman who's disgraced, usually because of sexual misconduct. So they're falling in love. Now they're fallen women. And of course, there's religious overtones to that phrase, fallen woman. Not so much interesting stuff here. She's talking about love. You can read it and work it out. Maybe you'll be able to work it out together, as if the two of you were a puzzle that could be solved. Otherwise, one of you, most likely the man, would go wandering off on a trajectory of his own, taking his addictive body with him and leaving you with bad withdrawal. So this is all about love and the absence of love and the removal of love. Everything that went on in your life was thought to be due to some positive or negative power emanating from inside your head. So that's the modern view, and we still have that idea now. And of course, that kind of goes against a lot of traditional religious views, which would say that we are in God's power. Make your life a tribute to the loved one, and he was the loved one. Okay, and then I'm a refugee from the past is just a beautiful quote, talking about how Offred is in this, awful world, but she really belongs somewhere else. She belongs in the past world. So, more waiting, lady in waiting. That's what they used to call those stories where you could buy maternity clothes. So, lady in waiting, sort of this idea that she is, she's like a servant. And then we have the female networks of the Marthas here. There's a network for the Marthas then, which is something in it. There's a network of the Marthas then with something in it for them. That's nice to know. And there, a shadow behind a shadow. So this is her daughter. She's seeing a picture of her daughter. I have been obliterated for her. I am only a shadow now, far back behind the glib, shiny surface of this photograph. A shadow of a shadow, as dead mothers become. You can see it in her eyes. I am not there, but she exists. In her white dress, she grows and lives. Isn't that a good thing, a blessing? Still, I can't bear it, to have been erased like that. Better she'd brought me nothing. So the utter loss of human closeness by Offred in that quote there.